Good morning. Well, we are continuing with looking at the books of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And as we look at these books this morning, I want to make a jump. I want to think about something which is related to these books, which somehow we have to take into account in our own lives and our understanding of these books. I want, in fact, to look for a moment at the life of Moses. Yes, Moses. Now, we are told at the very last, we started off last week with looking at the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created. I now want to go to the last of these books, the book of Deuteronomy, and I want to look at a verse in the very last verse of these 5 books. Let me read it to you. In the last of these books, it says this, talking about Moses' death, because the person who's writing this book is recording his death and then looking back on his life. He says, "Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all these signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all the other officials and to the whole of land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel." This is a very strange, enigmatic person. And as we come to look at these 5 books of Moses, I think we first of all have to look at this man and see who he was and where he'd come from and what his role was. We are told at the very beginning of the book of Genesis that Jacob and his family, having moved down into Egypt and having lived there for some time, suddenly there's a change of ruler in Egypt. And the change of ruler means that a new Pharaoh, a new dynasty had come to the throne. And this new Pharaoh looks out at his land and he sees these Jewish people, these sons of Israel, these tribes of Jacob, thriving in his land. And he knows that they were truly committed to the previous dynasty, because it was the previous dynasty, the dynasty under Joseph, who had brought them down into the land. And he worries about them. And he says, these people could become dangerous to us. And so I'm going to change them into a slave race. I'm going to make them work and not just live in the land alongside us. And that's what he does. In fact, he becomes so worried about the growth of these tribes and the number of children that they're having that he makes another decision. And he says, I want you to kill the male children who are born from these tribes. And he starts to do that, ordering that male children who are born should be thrown into the Nile. He's trying to do population control as far as these tribes are concerned. Now, what is really behind this? Well, if you remember, last week I was talking about the great fall of Lucifer, who had become Satan, the enemy of God. And Satan has also an understanding of who these people are. And he knows that finally God is going to try to use these people to establish his kingdom, and through these people to bring about the birth of the Messiah, who will defeat him. His one chance is to try and destroy these people and stop them from becoming the type of people that God wants them to be. As an aside, this is exactly what he's doing in the present day with anti-Semitism. He is again trying to destroy the people who have gathered in the land of Israel. He's causing the nations around them to become very antagonistic towards them. He's talking, for instance, through Iran, that some of their leaders have said, we were literally going to wipe them out and drive them back into the sea. He is moving throughout the world, wherever Jewish communities are gathering, and he's causing the people around them to act in an anti-Semitic way. Even through the Third Reich in the 1930s and 1940s, he tried to raise up a system which would try and destroy these people. Satan hates the Jewish people in the same way as he hates Christians. But he also knows that God is going to use these people at the end time, just like he used them at the beginning of times, and he's going to be using them to do some mighty works in the future. But that's just an aside. Let's look back at what he was doing in Egypt. Satan becomes aware of the fact that the time for the people of Israel to stay in Egypt is growing close. They're going to leave and go back to the land of Canaan. He's already prepared people there to try to oppose them. But now he works on Pharaoh, and he says to Pharaoh, these people have got to be controlled. They have to be kept down. They have to be destroyed. And the one thing you're going to do is you're going to cause them to throw their firstborn children, or all male children, into the Nile to try to stop this population and to stop them from growing in this way. And that's what happens. But God, knowing what he was going to do, had already made his plans. And when Moses was born, instead of throwing him into the Nile, his mother put him in a wicker basket and put him amongst the reeds of the Nile. And what happens? Yes, God's plan is fulfilled, because Pharaoh's daughter finds the wicker basket, and instead of Moses being brought up amongst his own people, he's in fact brought up within the palace of Pharaoh himself. We come back to this again tomorrow.